Imagine this. Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, stands confidently at the podium, addressing a packed room of tech enthusiasts at a prestigious conference. The audience is buzzing with anticipation, eager to hear about his groundbreaking work in rockets, artificial intelligence, and the future of electric cars. The energy in the room is electric, until out of nowhere, a young girl, no older than 7 or 8, steps up to the microphone. With wide, innocent eyes, she looks up at Musk and asks, "Do you believe in God?" The room falls into an eerie silence. The question hangs in the air, unexpected and profound. What Musk says next not only brings the little girl to tears, but also strikes a deep emotional chord with everyone in the room. It was an ordinary day at a tech conference, the kind of event that draws the brightest minds in the world, all eager to hear the latest innovations and bold visions for the future. The air was filled with excitement and curiosity as Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, took the stage. Known for his groundbreaking work in space exploration, electric vehicles, and his mission to revolutionize industries, Musk was in his element, captivating the audience with his plans to change the future of humanity. He was giving one of his signature talks, sharing his ideas with the room full of tech enthusiasts, engineers, and industry leaders. People hung on every word, eager to hear about the next big thing, whether it was Mars colonization, the Hyperloop, or the rise of artificial intelligence. Musk spoke with confidence, his voice resonating through the room as he outlined his latest ventures. It was business as usual for him, the visionary entrepreneur who had achieved so much and was determined to do even more. The crowd responded with applause and cheers, clearly impressed by his ambitious goals and the energy he brought to the stage. For most in the audience, the event was a chance to be inspired, to learn from a man who was leading the charge into a new era of technological advancement. As Musk spoke, the room filled with a sense of awe. The future was unfolding right before their eyes, and they were all eager to be part of it. But little did anyone know, the most profound moment of the entire event was about to unfold, and it would come from an unexpected source. In the midst of all this excitement, a young girl, no more than 7 or 8 years old, stood up in the middle of the sea of adults, her tiny frame barely noticeable among the towering figures of engineers and entrepreneurs. She was wearing a cute dress, her hair tied up in a simple ponytail, and she looked almost out of place in the world of technology and industry leaders. The crowd, which had been buzzing with excitement just moments before, fell into a sudden, unexpected silence. All eyes turned to her as she made her way slowly to the microphone. People shifted in their seats, exchanging puzzled glances. What could a young child possibly ask someone like Elon Musk? Was she going to ask about electric cars or about how SpaceX was going to get humanity to Mars? It was a room filled with questions about the future of technology, the cutting edge of human achievement. But this little girl was about to change the trajectory of the conversation entirely. The audience waited, the silence in the room thickening with anticipation. Everyone was curious about what this little girl could possibly say. As she stood there at the microphone, her tiny hand grasping it with all the seriousness of someone much older, she took a deep breath. The moment seemed to stretch on forever, the room completely still. And then, with a clear and innocent voice, the little girl asked, "Mr. Musk, do you believe in God?" Her words hung in the air, simple yet profound. The question was not about technology, not about electric cars or rockets or the future of humanity. It was a question that had nothing to do with any of the subjects Musk had been discussing. It was a question about something much deeper, about faith, existence, and the mysteries of life. In an instant, the room fell into complete silence. The atmosphere shifted, and all eyes turned to Elon Musk, who was now faced with a question far more personal and profound than any he had been asked in his years of public speaking. He was accustomed to answering questions about technology and innovation, about space exploration and sustainable energy. But this was different. This was a question that didn't have an answer rooted in science, technology, or logic. It was a question that required reflection, introspection, and perhaps even vulnerability. The silence was almost deafening as everyone waited for Musk's response. The little girl stood there, still and quiet, her eyes wide with curiosity. She wasn't asking for an explanation of space travel or a new technological breakthrough. She just wanted to know what Musk thought about something that science couldn't explain: faith, spirituality, and the meaning of life. Elon Musk, ever the rational thinker, stood still for a moment. His usual confidence seemed to falter, his mind racing to find the right words. He wasn't sure how to respond. Should he give a scientific explanation, one that would make sense based on facts and reason? Or should he share something more personal, something that didn't have a concrete answer? His gaze softened as he looked at the little girl, and for the first time that day he seemed to be considering something far deeper than the usual topics he spoke about. After a long pause, he spoke, his voice a little softer than usual. "That's a very big question," he said, acknowledging the complexity of the subject. He paused again, clearly thinking about his response. "I don't know if I can say definitively whether there is a God," he continued, "but I do think that the universe is so vast and we are so small that it's hard to imagine how everything came to be without something greater at work." His words were thoughtful, but they were also a reflection of his struggle to answer, a question that had no easy solution. He wasn't offering a definitive answer, but instead he was sharing his own reflections on the vastness of the universe and the mystery of existence. The room remained still, the audience hanging on his every word, not because of the typical technological insights they had come to expect from Musk, but because of the vulnerability he had shown in admitting that some questions simply don't have clear answers. The young girl listened intently, her eyes focused on Musk as she absorbed every word he said. She wasn't looking for a definitive answer. She was seeking something more profound, something that went beyond science and technology. And in that moment, Elon Musk shared with her something more meaningful than any scientific discovery he could have offered. A reminder that there are some things in life that cannot be explained through reason alone. Some things, like faith, purpose, and the mysteries of existence, are beyond the realm of technology, beyond the reach of even the brightest minds. As the little girl absorbed his words, the room seemed to understand something deeper as well. This wasn't just a question about God. It was a reminder that no matter how much we know or how much we achieve, there will always be mysteries in life that we cannot explain. And sometimes those mysteries are what connect us, what make us human. In that quiet moment, the audience realized that the most profound questions in life are not always about technology or the future of humanity. Sometimes they are about the things that bind us together, the things that touch our hearts and souls. With a voice that was both small and clear, the little girl asked, "Mr. Musk, do you believe in God?" The question, though simple, struck a deep chord with everyone present. It wasn't about rockets, cars, or Mars, topics that Elon Musk had spent so much of his life tirelessly working on. No, this was different. This was a question about something much deeper and far more elusive: faith, belief, and the mysteries of life. It was a question that could not be answered with calculations or scientific models, not something that could be derived from algorithms or equations. It was a question that touched on the heart of human existence, the nature of belief and the search for meaning. The room, once filled with the buzz of enthusiastic techies and forward-thinking engineers, fell silent. The sound of the microphone crackling seemed louder than usual as the words hung in the air. Everyone's attention shifted from the space-age ideas Musk had been discussing to the simple, yet profound question that this young child had posed. The energy in the room shifted, dramatically. Where moments before there had been an air of excitement, now there was a palpable stillness. The crowd, a mix of industry leaders, experts, and future tech hopefuls, sat in rapt attention, wondering how the renowned entrepreneur, who had built his empire on groundbreaking technological innovations, would respond. Would he offer a definitive answer rooted in science, or would he reveal something more personal and human? Musk was used to responding to complex technical questions about electric cars, reusable rockets, and artificial intelligence. He had a wealth of knowledge on these topics and could answer confidently, having spent years dedicating himself to solving these problems. But this was not something that could be solved by engineering or data. It was something far bigger, a question about life, the universe, and everything in between. For a brief moment, it was as if time had stopped. There was no immediate answer, no rehearsed response. Instead, Elon Musk stood at the podium, his expression softening as if he was processing something far more complex than the physics of space travel. The weight of the question seemed to hang in the air, making the moment feel suspended in time. Musk wasn't just grappling with an ordinary question. He was faced with something that even the greatest minds struggle to answer, a question about belief, spirituality, and the mysteries of existence. As Musk stood still, his mind was undoubtedly racing, trying to find the right words. How does one answer a question that has puzzled humanity for centuries? A question that, despite all the advancements in science, remains largely unanswered? He wasn't just grappling with how to explain something to a curious child. He was grappling with something far more profound, the uncertainty that even someone with his intellect and achievements must face when confronted with life's deepest mysteries. And there he was, in front of a packed room full of people who were looking to him for an answer, unsure of how to respond. It was in these moments of pause that one often feels the weight of their responsibility, not just to provide answers, but to offer a reflection of what it means to be human. For a man who had spent so much of his life pushing the limits of technology, it was humbling to be confronted with a question that could not be answered through data or programming. After what seemed like an eternity, Musk took a deep breath and began to speak. His voice was quieter than usual, softer, as though the weight of the moment was urging him to choose his words carefully. He began slowly, as if feeling his way through the response. "That's a very big question," he said. His words were gentle but carried a sense of sincerity. He wasn't just brushing off the question. He understood that the weight of it deserved careful consideration. "I don't know if I can say definitively whether there is a God," he continued, "but I do think that the universe is so vast, and we are so small, that it's hard to imagine how everything came to be without something greater at work." The room fell into even deeper silence as Musk spoke. The audience, who had come to hear about the latest developments in tech and space exploration, now found themselves engaged in a conversation that transcended any topic they had expected to hear. Musk wasn't offering an answer that was rooted in science or technology. Instead, he was offering something far more personal. He was admitting that despite all his knowledge and achievements, there are questions in life that do not have easy answers. Questions about existence, about purpose, and about what lies beyond our understanding. His words were thoughtful and honest, but they also left the question hanging in the air. The audience was still waiting, wondering if Musk would elaborate, or if he would continue down this path of introspection and vulnerability. Would he attempt to provide a clearer answer, or would he leave the question unanswered? The young girl, still standing at the microphone, waited intently, her small face full of curiosity, sensing that this moment was unlike anything she had expected. For a brief moment, it seemed that the conversation had reached a standstill. But then something remarkable happened. Elon Musk, who was often regarded as a man of logic and reason, took a step further into the unknown. His tone shifted again, becoming more earnest, more personal. "I think about the stars," he said, his voice softer now, as if reflecting on his own place in the universe. He gestured upward as though pointing toward the very heavens. "And I wonder what's out there. What is the purpose of all of this? The question of whether or not there's a higher power, it's something I think about a lot." It was in that moment that the entire room seemed to breathe together. Musk wasn't just sharing his thoughts on science or technology. He was sharing his own vulnerability, his own wonder about the mysteries of the universe. He wasn't the tech mogul of SpaceX and Tesla at that moment. He was a human being grappling with the same existential questions that everyone else faces. A man who, despite all his knowledge and success, still wondered about the bigger picture of life, existence, and faith. The words Musk shared weren't just for the little girl who had asked the question, they were for everyone in that room. In that moment, Elon Musk had reminded them all that some questions, some mysteries, are bigger than science, bigger than technology, and bigger than any single human achievement. And perhaps that is where the true magic lies. The room remained still, and the audience waited in complete silence, holding their collective breath as they looked at Elon Musk, the man who had revolutionized space exploration and electric vehicles. A room full of tech enthusiasts, innovators, and industry leaders, all accustomed to Musk's ability to quickly and confidently solve complex problems, was now waiting for his response to a question far beyond the realms of technology and science. Elon Musk, the visionary entrepreneur known for his brilliance in fields that push the limits of human knowledge, seemed momentarily lost for words. He cleared his throat, a subtle gesture that only added to the tension in the air. It was clear that he was trying to compose himself, aware that the response he was about to give would carry weight. This wasn't just about technology, rockets, or electric cars. This was a question about something deeper, something that spoke to the core of human existence. He wasn't just facing a child's curiosity, though that was part of it. He was facing the very nature of life, the universe, and the unknown. As the CEO of two multi-billion-dollar companies, Musk had built his career on solving impossible problems. But this was different. This was a question that could not be answered with equations, experiments, or the launch of a new rocket. This was about faith, belief, and the mysteries that no amount of technological advancement had been able to explain. Musk's gaze softened as he focused on the young girl standing in front of him. She wasn't looking for a scientific explanation. She wasn't asking about the latest breakthrough in AI or wondering how soon she could get her hands on the newest Tesla model. She had asked something far more profound, and in that moment, it was as if the weight of her question had caused Musk to pause and truly consider it for the first time. After what seemed like an eternity of silence, Musk finally began to speak, his voice softer than usual, almost hesitant. The crowd leaned in, eager to hear what he would say. "That's a very big question," he began. His words were deliberate, as though he was choosing each one carefully, aware that his response would resonate with everyone in the room, not just the little girl. His voice was less the confident, polished tone that usually accompanied his talks about space, technology, and progress. This time, it was something more reflective. "I don't know if I can say definitively whether there is a God," Musk continued, each word carefully measured. There was a certain humility in his voice now, an admission of the limitations even someone of his intelligence and success faced when confronted with a question that had eluded humans for centuries. The room remained silent as his words sank in. "But I do think that the universe is so vast and we are so small that it's hard to imagine how everything came to be without something greater at work." The simple honesty in his words hung in the air. Musk wasn't trying to avoid the question, nor was he dismissing it. Instead, he was offering an answer that acknowledged the complexity of the issue, one that recognized the vastness of the universe and the limitations of human understanding. The crowd, which had expected the usual answers centered around technology, space, or scientific progress, was now faced with something much more vulnerable, a personal reflection from Musk, who had achieved so much, yet was confronting something far beyond his realm of expertise. As Musk spoke, the young girl stood still, her eyes fixed on him. She listened intently, her expression unchanged, though there was something in the way she watched him that suggested she was processing the depth of his response. She hadn't asked for a concrete answer, something that could be neatly explained, or wrapped up in a few lines of logic. No, she simply wanted to understand, to know what someone who had accomplished so much thought about something as unquantifiable as belief. Musk's response, while thoughtful and honest, didn't provide the clarity she had hoped for. The question that had started as simple curiosity now seemed to linger in the air, unanswered. It was as though his words, though sincere, didn't fully close the loop of the question. The idea that the universe was vast and that something greater might be at work left much room for interpretation. It was a response that made sense on an intellectual level, but didn't answer the deeper, more personal aspects of the question that the young girl might have been asking. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the room might fall back into uncertainty. Would Musk be able to provide an answer that could satisfy the little girl's curiosity? Or would the weight of the question prove to be too much, even for someone as brilliant as he was? The crowd, still silent, waited for Musk to continue, unsure if he would expand on his thoughts or if the conversation would end there. The little girl, who had asked such a simple yet profound question, remained where she was, her face an unreadable mask, though the intensity of her gaze suggested she was still processing his words, still trying to make sense of this new and unexpected layer of complexity. Musk stood there for a few moments, lost in thought. His eyes drifted upward as though he were searching for an answer in the vastness of the room, or perhaps the stars above. The brief silence felt heavier now. It was a silence filled with the weight of unanswered questions, the kind that often linger after profound moments, moments that touch on the unknown and challenge the limits of what we understand. It was clear that Musk was struggling with the idea that some questions of faith, belief, and existence, didn't have easy answers. But in that struggle, there was something deeply human. In that moment, he had revealed his vulnerability. For a man who had built a reputation on solving the world's most challenging problems, this was a reminder that even the brightest minds are often left with unanswered questions about life, the universe, and the mysteries of existence. And in that pause, that moment of uncertainty, Musk had demonstrated something that no technological achievement could ever replace: humility, introspection, and the courage to admit that there are things beyond even our greatest intellects. Things that cannot be solved with science or data. Things that remain for now a mystery. Then, something remarkable happened. As the room remained quiet, the tension almost palpable, Elon Musk's tone shifted. The calmness in his voice, which had been analytical and precise, began to soften. His words took on a new weight, an earnestness that wasn't typical of the man known for his brilliant mind and bold ventures. The confident tech mogul who had led humanity to new frontiers in space and sustainable energy was no longer speaking as the CEO of SpaceX or Tesla. In that moment, he was simply a man wrestling with the same questions that everyone else faces, questions about life, purpose, and the unknown. "I think about the stars," he said, gesturing upward as though pointing to the very heavens themselves. His hand moved slowly as if guiding the crowd's gaze towards the vastness beyond. "And I wonder what's out there. What is the purpose of all of this? The question of whether or not there's a higher power. It's something I think about a lot." In that moment, the room seemed to collectively exhale. Musk's words felt like a bridge between the vast, cold world of science and the warmth of human connection. For so long, he had been seen as a visionary in the field of technology, constantly striving to push the boundaries of human achievement. But now, in this quiet exchange, he was revealing something raw, something deeply human. He wasn't just a figurehead of innovation. He was a person. Someone who wondered, just like the rest of us, about the bigger picture. What was the purpose of life? What is our place in this enormous universe? The vulnerability Musk displayed was unexpected. Here was a man who had boldly led missions to Mars, taken on some of the most difficult challenges humanity could imagine, and revolutionized multiple industries. And yet, when faced with a question about faith, about the mysteries of existence, he didn't hide behind technology or ambition. Instead, he allowed himself to pause and reflect on the uncertainty that even the greatest minds encounter when grappling with questions that defy easy answers. As the words left Musk's lips, the audience felt a profound shift. It was as though the entire room had just shared in a deeply personal moment. His openness about his thoughts on the stars, the universe, and the idea of a higher power made him more relatable, more real, and more accessible. This wasn't a leader of industry giving a rehearsed speech about progress or technology. This was a human being reflecting on his own doubts, his own quest for meaning in a vast, chaotic world. The young girl, still standing at the microphone, listened intently. Her eyes, which had been wide with curiosity, now softened with understanding. In that moment, it wasn't just about the question anymore. It was about the connection that had formed between her and Elon Musk. This was no longer the tech mogul she had admired from afar, This was a person who, despite his incredible accomplishments, was reflecting on the same existential questions that she, too, had pondered in her young life. Her face, which had once been filled with uncertainty as she asked her question, now showed a quiet confidence. She wasn't alone in her wonderings anymore. The most influential tech figure in the world, a man who had pushed the boundaries of what was possible, was now grappling with the same mysteries that many of us face. For the first time, she realized that even the greatest minds aren't immune to the uncertainty of life. And that realization made all the difference. Musk's honesty in that moment created a bridge between them, uniting the two of them in a shared experience. This wasn't about who was right or wrong about which answer was correct. It was about a moment of mutual recognition, two people from very different walks of life, coming together in a shared sense of wonder about the mysteries that lie beyond our understanding. As the young girl absorbed Musk's words, her expression shifted again. The intensity in her eyes, once filled with raw curiosity, now reflected a sense of peace. She didn't need a definitive answer to her question. What she had received was far more valuable, a moment of connection, a reminder that we are all part of a much larger, unexplained story. Musk had spoken from the heart, and in doing so, he had given her something that would stay with her long after the conference had ended. The room, still silent, seemed to collectively share in the power of that moment. The audience, who had been eagerly awaiting insights into space exploration and technological breakthroughs, now found themselves reflecting on something much more profound. Musk had given them a gift, an invitation to pause and consider the things that truly matter. While technology and innovation were undoubtedly important, Musk's words served as a powerful reminder that there are aspects of life that go beyond logic, beyond science, and beyond human comprehension. As the silence hung in the air, the room began to shift once again. The young girl, still standing at the microphone, looked up at Musk with a soft smile. There was no longer any uncertainty in her eyes, only a deep, unspoken understanding. She wasn't seeking answers anymore. She had found something even more powerful, a shared moment of humanity. And just like that, the connection between the two of them, despite the vast differences in their experiences, felt complete. Musk had revealed a side of himself that few had ever seen, a side that wasn't focused on the future of humanity in space, but rather on the beauty of the human. Experience filled with wonder, uncertainty, and a deep desire for meaning. The room, now full of emotion, slowly began to erupt in applause. It wasn't for Musk's technical brilliance, his future plans for Mars, or his innovative spirit. It was for his honesty, his vulnerability, and the way he had shared a part of himself that resonated deeply with everyone in the room. Musk had shown them that no matter how far humanity progresses, the most important thing is the connection we share as human beings, the shared moments of wonder and reflection that bind us all together. And in that moment, everyone understood something profoundly simple. The questions that matter most aren't always the ones we can answer. Sometimes they are the ones that help us feel more connected to each other, to the universe, and to the unknown mysteries of life. After a long pause, Elon Musk turned to the little girl and smiled, a smile that seemed to carry the weight of everything that had just passed between them. He wasn't just the CEO of SpaceX, Tesla, and Neuralink anymore. He was a human being, vulnerable and open, sharing a deeply personal moment. "You know," he said gently, his voice filled with warmth, "I think the most important thing we can do is be kind to one another, help one another, and try to make the world a better place. Whether or not we know what happens after life, it's how we live that matters." In that simple statement, Musk revealed a truth that transcended his usual talk of rockets, artificial intelligence, and electric vehicles. It wasn't about the next frontier in space or the next big technological breakthrough. No, it was about humanity itself. It was about kindness, compassion, and the impact we have on the world and those around us. Musk's words weren't the kind of answer that could be measured in data points or algorithms, but they were far more meaningful. They spoke to the very core of what it means to be human. As the words left his lips, the little girl's eyes softened, and a gentle smile crept across her face. She had asked a question that had seemed so simple at first, but now, in this moment, she realized how much deeper it had gone. She wasn't looking for a technical answer anymore. The question she had asked wasn't about understanding the mysteries of the universe with equations or scientific reasoning. It was about understanding the human experience, the things that bind us together, the emotions and actions that make us care for one another. Musk hadn't just answered her question. He had given her something far more profound, a lesson about living with purpose and love. As she absorbed his words, her expression changed. It wasn't just a smile anymore. There was a sense of realization in her eyes, as if a new understanding had blossomed in her heart. The innocence in her face remained, but there was now a deeper knowing, a recognition that the answer to her question wasn't just about science or belief. It was about how we treat one another during our time here. The tears began to well, up in her eyes a quiet reflection of the depth of the moment. These were tears not of confusion or frustration, but of understanding, of connecting to something bigger than the question itself. For the young girl, this moment was a turning point. It was the moment when she realized that the mysteries of life were not to be answered with technology or knowledge alone, but through kindness, empathy, and a commitment to making the world a better place. It wasn't about knowing exactly what
happens after life or having all the answers. It was about living a life that reflected love, compassion, and purpose. And in that instant, she understood that.
She understood that the power of kindness could change the world. For the audience, this simple exchange between Musk and the little girl had become something much bigger than any of them could have imagined. The conference, which had been filled with discussions about artificial intelligence, space travel, and innovations for the future, suddenly felt secondary. The most important thing wasn't the technology they were there to celebrate. It was the message that Musk had just shared. The most important thing in life isn't about creating the next big thing or reaching the stars. It's about how we live in the here and now, how we treat each other, and how we make the world a better place. The audience, who had been waiting eagerly for insights into the future of technology, now found themselves reflecting on a much more timeless truth. The applause that followed wasn't just for Musk's brilliance as an entrepreneur or his work with SpaceX and Tesla. It was for the beautiful, unspoken message he had just shared, a message that transcended the technological innovations he was known for and instead focused on the fundamental values that make us human. The applause was for the reminder that, no matter how far we advance, it's the love and kindness we show to one another that truly matter. The little girl's simple question had sparked something far greater than anyone could have anticipated. It was a question that many people, no matter their age, have asked throughout history, one that's been pondered by some of the greatest minds, philosophers, and spiritual leaders. What happens after life? And although no one could give her a concrete answer, what Musk had shared was more profound than any answer could ever be. He had shown everyone in the room that, even in the vastness of space and the uncertainties of life, what truly matters is how we live, how we care for one another, and how we leave the world better than we found it. The room erupted in applause, not just for Elon Musk's scientific achievements, but for the beautiful, unspoken truth he had shared. The lesson was clear. Technology may change the world, but it is kindness, compassion, and a sense of shared humanity that make it worth changing. As the audience clapped, many of them were wiping away tears, not just in admiration for Musk, but in recognition of the deeper truth he had revealed. The applause was not merely for the genius who had designed rockets and electric cars. It was for the man who had paused to share a moment of true human connection, who reminded everyone that the pursuit of progress is meaningless if it doesn't also foster kindness and empathy. And that, perhaps, is the most inspiring lesson of all. In a world driven by progress, competition, and achievement, the most important things are not the technologies we create or the goals we accomplish. It is how we treat one another, how we support each other through life's challenges, and how we work together to make the world a better place. Elon Musk had just given a powerful reminder that the things we often overlook in our rush to achieve success, love, kindness, and empathy, are the true keys to a meaningful and fulfilling life. And that, in the end, is the lesson that lasts far longer than any scientific discovery.